High fashion sneakers are having a moment beyond anything before because the line between popular sneaker culture and high fashion has never been thinner or blurrier than it is today. Welcome to From the Ground Up. I'm your host, Pete Forrester. In this episode, we're going to examine how high-end sneakers landed in pop culture, how these two seemingly disparate cultures play off each other, and why it is people routinely scramble to pay over $1,000 for a pair of sneakers that looks like it went through the washing machine. Just 3 years ago, the number of sneaker collectors wearing Givenchy and Saint Laurent sneakers in their rotation with Jordans and Yeezys was relatively low. But now we're seeing the culture evolve to the point where a common sneaker dude can identify a pair of Gucci's or Balenciagas. So what's that about? And how did we get here? The answer is relatively simple. High fashion culture and street culture are experiencing a holistic crossover. Streetwear and street culture have always played with high fashion silhouettes and pieces. On the other side, high-end fashion designers have drawn inspiration from pop culture, and in the last decade that's become ever more evident. Hey guys, I'm here with Jackie Kim, Associate Fashion Director of Barneys New York, and Noah Thomas, Assistant Editor for Highsnobiety. Thanks for joining me today, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we're talking about high fashion sneakers today. Do you guys think that high fashion sneakers, like from the brands like Balenciaga, Gucci, do you think that these sneakers should be considered in the same sort of like group as, say, a Jordan or a Yeezy, a more sneakerhead type sneaker?
Absolutely. I think the way that the consumer is shopping for both of those, the price point is a little different, but it's still the same kind of fetishized moment. So definitely playing in the same arena. And to be completely honest, I think a lot of those high-end brands take creative inspiration from, more traditional athletic silhouettes. And so it's fair game. They should play in the same ballpark.
Yeah.
I personally think it's a little different, although those high-end designers definitely take from Nike and Jordan and all of those brands. I just think, there's more, a little bit more concept behind it and just like a different game, I think.
Do you collect both?
I do not collect both. I do consider myself a bit of a sneakerhead, but I strictly only wear kind of designer sneakers.
Oh.
Yeah, only. I don't wear any Jordans
Not bad.
or Nikes or anything like that. I only,
Clutch my pearls. No way.
I just really appreciate, designers that have a story, and I like the idea of wearing like this is a fall winter so-and-so, sneaker. I like that. I like knowing the sneakers from that collection.
Well, I mean, more traditionally, sneakerhead sneakers have those same sorts of stories. I mean, I was at the gym yesterday, finishing up, walking out, and I was wearing a pair of, black and red 4s from, I think they were 2013. And the guy was like, yo, are those the 2013s?
Right.
And then I was like, yo, yeah, they're coming out again next year. And he's like, yeah, with the Nike Air on the back. And so it has the same sort of like placement.
Yeah.
Does that sort of change? I don't know. I'm pushing back on you just because I think that what you identified does exist in the sneaker culture.
It does exist. Yeah, but that's kind of like what I was saying. It's kind of like if you're into Chevys and if you're into Aston Martins, it's just different. It's the same, but it's different.
I'm just gonna give you guys a quick rundown of how some of these conversations happen between the high-end brands and the sneaker brands you're used to seeing. You're familiar with this shoe. This is the Royal Jordan 1. We've been seeing this shoe since the mid-1980s. 1985 to 1986 is when these first came out. They sort of, just like all the rest of the Jordan 1s, they sort of disappeared for a while until they started being retroed again. They really rose to prominence after the retro in 2001. Now, a bunch of high-end brands have ripped off the Jordan 1, but there's one that I'm sure you guys are thinking of right off the bat, and that is Saint Laurent's SL10H. Now, it's pretty obvious to see how these two sneakers are in communication with one another. You can see all the similar paneling. It's a panel here instead of a swoosh. But when Saint Laurent came out with these shoes, they came out in all the same basic colorways of the Jordan 1. There was a shadow colorway, a bread colorway, gold, some silver, everything that you expected, and then a couple more, but it's obviously based off of this shoe. And that's a pretty clear conversation going in one direction. But I want to show you guys something that's a little bit less expected, and that is this shoe from Balenciaga. Now, you may have seen this before, and if you have, it's probably because you saw it on the feet of Kanye West, who happened to be wearing Balenciaga like arenas at the same time that he was wearing, you know, the 2001 retro of the Royal One. Now, these came out after we started to see this blend of high and low, and so it may not seem super obvious based on the looks like it was with the Saint Laurent, but you have to take a look at, this is a pretty similar color scheme going on in terms of this very particular blue. I get it, they're slightly different between this more violet and this, you know, very royal blue. But when these first came out, this pleated version of the Balenciaga monochrome, they came out in this blue, in red, in black. These standard colors that we're used to seeing from Jordan. Now, this to this, maybe not so clear, not as clear as a Saint Laurent, but remember, who was one of Kanye West's best friends? A Mr. Don C. Now, the Jordan 2 is the first shoe from Jordan, I mean, it was the second shoe total, but it was the first shoe from Jordan that was made in Italy. Where's Balenciaga sneakers made? They're made in Italy. This pleated leather treatment that we've got going on, you got some quilted right here, some suede on the toe, we got some suede over here. Flat leather up on here, you got flat leather up on the toe. So once you start to see how these things move along, you can see how this conversation goes from here, from a Jordan 1, all the way to Balenciaga, and then someone like Don C is able to pull that conversation back from Balenciaga and bring it right back to where it started, back into the Jordan brand from 1 to 2. What's up, guys? We are here at Barneys, New York with Jackie. We're actually gonna take a look at some of these high fashion sneakers. I wanna do sort of like a trend timeline, sort of where things have been, where things are right now, and where things are going.
Let's do it.
So when I'm sort of looking around, here we are at the Vetements table. The first thing I'm drawn to is this, which was sort of like originally a Stan Smith.
Well, I think if we're really talking about where we started,
Yeah.
I would have to say the Chuck.
True.
Maybe not in this version, but the Comme des Garçons collab with the
definitely.
hearts. It was an easy one for people to jump into, definitely into that designer sneaker world.
Yeah, and
But
then
yeah, Stan's good.
then we have a Stan Smith, and then the Gucci Ace sort of really popped off.
Yes.
And that sort of feels to me like a Stan Smith, easy for people to grab onto.
Yeah, it's definitely a wearable shoe.
Yeah.
But it still has a fashion designer element, which speaks to more customers.
This is definitely sort of Stan Smith, and then we had this, which was like the Jordan 1,
Of
which actually
course.
probably predates most of this. Do you think?
Maybe around the same time, I would
Okay,
say.
yeah.
But definitely, this was a huge nod to like stepping into designer sneakers
Got
for
it.
Saint Laurent.
So it's like a really good way to sort of cross over between streetwear, like sneakerhead sneakers, and
Yeah, I think like
Designer
this, for designers to do something like this, it's a little bit safe.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it could be a nod to like a true Nike silhouette or something
Right.
similar, but I think here you see it really kind of taking more of a risk
Right.
and speaking to a sneaker streetwear customer.
cool. And then I think, tell me if I'm wrong, it was the sock runner.
It was the sock runner.
Yeah, so we have
The
these.
sock runner that launched the sock.
The sock runner. So we have the Vetements for sure, but what was really famous, I think, is this Balenciaga.
It is still doing so well for us.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think when we first saw it, it was kind of
What the hell is this?
unexpected. Yeah. But you know, we took the risk, and then we had 500 pre-orders that we couldn't get filled, and I mean, we did, of course. We're Barneys, so we handle it. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's so unexpected, and I think this is what people, because it was unexpected, people were like excited about it.
For sure.
So I love that.
And they, this came in really quick, and it had like, I feel like it had a really quick moment.
It was actually for a few, I would say more than a few seasons.
Okay.
So this is actually pretty early on in the timeline, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is still
And
a
then-
great shoe.
And then there
Love
were,
it.
remember arenas?
Oh yeah. Those are great shoes too.
They are really great.
Can we just have a moment for the
Yeah, let's have
arenas?
a moment.
Wow.
So the next thing was, I think, soles. When soles just started to get massive. This sort of pinnacle of that is the Balenciaga Triple S, which this is a size 13, it's bigger than my forearm. Talk to me about sort of the way that people responded to this when it first showed up.
Well, I think what's really interesting about this shoe is that it did walk the runway, which is a huge kind of statement for Balenciaga to make. So it's saying like this is really a part of our collection, our high-end collection. We feel that it's editorial. It's not just a commercial product. It really became a statement designer shoe beyond the sneaker kind of category. So I think for this shoe, you know, this really is our golden child as well at Barneys. People come in for it all the time. But because of all of the other elements and the other sneakers that have predated this shoe, I think people felt comfortable wearing it.
Sure. Yeah, we do have to say that when we first got here, you guys didn't have any of them, and you found this one pair in the stock room.
Size 13.
Just for us.
Promise you it will not be here
By the end of the day.
by the end of the day.
Yeah, it's crazy. So that's what's going on in sort of the sneaker trends, but we gotta get a little bit of history, and Gian, the editorial director of Highsnobiety, is gonna give us a good primer. Take it away, Gian.
You can't walk 5 blocks in New York City without spotting at least one pair of Balenciaga Triple S sneakers. The chunky-soled shoe is undoubtedly the kick du jour of the modern fashion set, but it's definitely not the first, nor will it be the last high-fashion sneaker taking the streets by storm. Way back in the 80s, you had the Gucci tennis. The Italian fashion house had been paying attention to a new trend in sportswear and took a few design cues from sneakers like the Adidas Rod Laver and added Gucci's trademark green and red pops of color. Meanwhile, Swiss company Bally was getting shout-outs from rappers like Slick Rick and Dougie Fresh, with silhouettes like The Competition, Vita Parkour, and Super Smash among the most popular. A decade later, around 1996, Prada celebrated the America's Cup sailing competition with the debut of a sneaker that shared its name. The patent leather contrasted upper looked like a streamlined New Balance 990 mixed with a boat shoe. Now what these all have in common is that they weren't necessarily priced to move, they were priced to flex. Any fashion sneaker worth its cred has a high price of admission. That brings us to the early 2000s, where Maison Martin Margiela and Dior Homme were putting out new interpretations of the German army trainer, a standard issue sneaker Adidas made for the German army starting in the 70s era under the name Bundeswehr. Now, Visvim designer Hiroki Nakamura introduced his moccasin sneaker hybrid FBT in 2001, which was actually at the suggestion of Hiroshi Fujiwara. Grotesque sneaker fiend Rick Owens was exaggerating with Nike Dunks with a Geo basket around 2008, and the deformed Chuck Taylor Ramones in the Dark Shadow line. And Raf Simons was already putting out his own take on the Nike Vandal. In 2004, Peter Pupat and Flavio Girolami started common projects, inadvertently creating the luxury sneaker market as we know it today. And we haven't even talked about collabs. It's simply impossible to cover everything from Eddie Sliman's Jordan-inspired SL10H to Phoebe Philo's high-end veggie tan Air Force One mid homages for Celine. And don't even get me started on Henderscheme, the artisanal Japanese shoemaker that makes super expensive all-leather replicas of famous sneakers. What it boils down to is this: fashion's relationship with sneakers mirrors its relationship with streetwear. Somewhere along the way, the lines between appreciation and appropriation got blurred.
What do you guys think that these high fashion sneakers have done that the mainstream sneakers haven't done that you think that they should?
I think marketing-wise, if you look at the collections that have strong sneakers, they really merchandise it and they style it in a way that's lifestyle. So, I mean, for example, Margiela this past season, their runway for women's had such crazy, chunky, dirty sneakers. I mean, they were amazing, but then they paired it back to such a chic, I couldn't call it chic, but it was a very designer look, even though it looked like she was wearing dirty sneakers. So I think in a way it gave the sneaker a little bit more power, a little bit more, a higher level of luxury versus putting a legging on with a running sneaker and like a zip up or like a hoodie.
Right.
So I think there's a way you can style it to make a sneaker feel more elevated, and the luxury houses have a great way of doing that. Same thing with like letting it walk down a runway, even though traditionally it has never done that before. So the marketing element of that is really powerful.
Styling is a very important part of that. Also, silhouette, they just play a lot more. I mean, the Louis Vuitton sneaker is insane.
Yeah, the arc light
is amazing. So it just, the companies, they play it safe to a degree because they want to sell a lot, and their audience isn't used to these crazy silhouettes and these crazy colorways. And so if they could just play a little bit more and have a little bit more fun, be a little bit more experimental, yeah, I think it would just challenge people and it would just make the marketplace that much more exciting and give them something that they can wear that they can afford. You know, because if you want something super insane, you have to get a Triple S, you have to get a Louis Vuitton. These sneakers are, you know, from $500 to $1,000.
Right.
So, you know, play a little bit more and give the consumer something that they can wear that's, you know, exciting and in their price range.
Yeah. And we do have to do a quick shout out to Amiri. So, beginning. I mean,
Like when dinosaurs roamed the earth.
Because this is the German army trainer, which basically everything comes out of.
Yes, I agree. This actually predates everything.
Yeah. So just a little bit of history. This is the Margiela replica, which is based off the German army trainer that was the standard issue sneaker during World War II, I think it was. And so Margiela took that silhouette, and it's not that different from what they originally did. There was like an extra panel right under here, but otherwise the fashion house just basically made it just dope.
I actually did not know that it was an official replica, but now it makes sense.
Yeah, that's why it's called the replica.
Pete, you are teaching me all sorts of things today. I love it.
And one of the things that I really appreciate about what Margiela has done with the shoe, they like keep reinventing it.
Yeah.
Season after season after season. When I think of the future of designer sneakers, I think of the product Cloudburst.
Yes.
Personally. I think that this is so far ahead of trend and expectation that...
I mean, should we just talk about this Velcro moment?
Yeah, when's the last time that Velcro was on a successful...
trajectory? I don't know.
I don't know either. But in terms of like the shape, I mean, the shape has that sort of retro runner shape, and even some of this is reminiscent of like Raf Adidas. But I really think that it's a distillation. I mean, you can look at them and you can say, oh, this is an Element, you know, this is a Jordan. Put it all together and it turns into something that's like...
refined.
Really refined. When the sock runner was happening, everyone was like, well, minimal. So it's just a sock on a sole. And now that it's big soles, it's like, how big can we get the sole? This just sort of takes all those trends and says, you know what, I'm gonna go over here.
Yeah.
As streetwear takes more nods from high fashion, it ignites the taste of sneaker fans, while these fashion houses offer signature looks and trend agility that the big sneaker brands mostly can't. Sometimes you just want that Margiela look, and you can't get that from one of the big sneaker brands. Sneakers are just not as special as they used to be. This niche culture is no longer so small and insular, so anyone who wants to go further to separate themselves from the pack has to use some imagination. Or the easiest way to do that is to just throw down more cash. That's it for this episode. I hope you guys learned something. If you have any questions or comments or any suggestions for any future episodes, don't forget to drop them down in the comments below. We do pay attention. We are writing episodes based on your suggestions. Please feel free to like, subscribe, all of that stuff. Send this out into the ether. Our next episode is going to be dropping on April 27th. It's all about reselling, which I know you guys have all sorts of opinions about. Until then, I'm your host, Pete Forrester. Thank you so much.